Welcome to Batchademia,
a podcast so educational it could be a university class.
With your hosts,
Danielle Dick McHugh,
Kim Hannah,
and Bill Henniger.
Hey everybody, it's Danielle and Kim to talk about one of the worst first episodes of two, are you kidding me, finales of The Bachelorette since we've started this. I mean, how are you, Danielle?
That was the best worst.
It was the best worst.
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. I mean, yeah, it's starting to feel like fall. The sunsets have been beautiful. The moon has been weird, which I think I can feel it. I feel people have weird moon energy right now.
The drive home last night, the moon was crazy. It was really cool looking. So yeah, but I also think everybody's allergies were driving them crazy last week, so people were really loopy, and then I think the moon this week is causing people to be loopy.
Yeah, I think that people might just be loopy.
I think we deserve to be a little bit loopy.
We do. What we did not deserve was this week's episode of The Bachelorette.
That was the best segue I think we could have possibly had without setting it up beforehand.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's get to it so we can get through it. Hey!
Through it.
So we'll talk a little bit more about Tino later, but Rachel mentioned Tino's crazy hobbies, but never told us what those crazy hobbies were. So my question to you, I have two questions because I always cheat at this one. One, what do you think his crazy hobbies are? And two, what is your hobby that other people might think is crazy?
So like my dorky guess is that he collects trains. Like, wouldn't it be really awesome if he was just like a train collector? But given that they also talked about him taking risks and like kind of being an adventurer, I wonder if like his hobby is like mountain climbing or I don't know, jumping out of a plane, skydiving. That's what that's called. You know, so those are my Tino guesses.
Okay.
Close. It was trains, wasn't it?
We don't know what his crazy hobbies are.
Oh, they have.
I was gonna say, I think he's like super into Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
Talk about it because I don't think his dad would be cool with him doing anything at all creative.
Oh, poor Tino.
So what's your hobby that others might think is crazy?
Well, so I tend to get kind of obsessed with something for like a few years usually, and then like I move on. But I have been pretty obsessed with decorating my planner for a few years now. So, and I do sort of think of that as a hobby. And then, I mean, my kind of boring one, I guess it's not crazy, is that, I mean, I really am an avid reader of fiction. So, but, I kind of go through different exercise hobbies, So I went through a hot yoga period. I went through a cycling period, like spin classes. I'm currently really into a weightlifting program on YouTube. So like I'll kind of get obsessed with like things like that.
I like it. So I think my crazy hobby, which I can't really do right now because I'm not traveling nearly as much, obviously, with this job as I was with my previous job, is I love to watch horror shows and horror movies on planes.
Oh, why? What makes it special on a plane, Kim?
I think because I can watch it completely undistracted because I'm watching it on my phone. So I'm not watching it on the TV and then thinking around on my phone. I'm like focused. And then also I think because if I'm in a plane and we hit turbulence, the turbulence is not nearly as scary as the house on The Haunting of Hill House or It. So I super, that might be my weird one. And then
It's oddly specific.
It is I'm oddly specific in most venues in my life, but my hobby that isn't weird, but other people probably think is dorky because I've been doing it for 20 years, is I'm a knitter.
Oh, you knit. That's awesome.
I like to knit.
That.
I have made many baby blankets over the years. I've made a lot of scarves and hats. I've made adult size blankets. I made some like female fashion that I thought was really comfortable, and people tease me about it because they're like, why are you in the 19th century? And I'm like, because it's comfortable. Shut up. But so yeah, I'm a knitter, and I haven't been doing it recently. All my knitting stuff right now is in storage, but I like to knit so that I don't snack. So when I'm watching TV,
you got busy hands.
I'm knitting. And then I think my other weird hobby is my collecting of graphic t-shirts.
Ooh, that's fun.
I have a lot of graphic t-shirts and graphic sweatshirts and stuff. So
I love that.
But I really hope that Tino is into either trains or Dungeons and Dragons.
I hope that he's a knitter. I can imagine that he's actually extreme knitting.
Extreme knitting. Ah!
He only knits at the peak of a mountain.
Yes. And he's only knitting at the peak of a mountain, his costume for Dungeons and Dragons.
He water skis while knitting.
Oh,
or knits while water skiing.
That stretches out the wool. You got to be careful with that.
I love that. Every few years, I'm like, I'm going to take up sewing. I should learn how to sew. I work in a theater. It'd be really helpful. And then I'm always like, yeah, no, I'm really, really, really bad at it.
I am pretty good at it. I just haven't done it in a really long time.
Yeah.
Because I don't when we were loading up my stuff, I was like, I don't think my sewing machine ever came out of the closet the entire time I've lived in Cedar Falls. The entire time I lived in Cedar Falls, I don't think I sewed a single thing. And I could have made thousands of projects during lockdown, and I did zero sewing during lockdown. Yeah.
Sometimes I just think our hobbies have their ebbs and flows.
I think so too. I did do a lot of knitting during lockdown, and I looked up a pattern to make wine bottle koozies. So a lot of people got wine koozies that I knit in their favorite colors, or in some one of my friends, I knit her one with the Iowa State cyclone logo in yellow with a red. And then my sister really likes blue, so I knit her a blue wine. I mean, a lot of people got wine koozies because I had a lot of time on my hands and I was really stressed. So I was like, knit or eat? Knit.
Now, we didn't have things to knit. So when we watched this episode, we just had to eat a lot.
We did eat a lot. It was really good, though.
It was really good.
All right. Should we do the recap?
Let's do it. Tell us what happened in this terribly boring episode.
Okay. So, full disclosure, because I can't remember if I already mentioned this, I did just rewatch most of the episode right before we recorded because the episode was so boring. We talked through most of it last night and we weren't super paying attention. So I was like, I got to rewatch it since I have to recap it. And it sucked. I mean, I shouldn't say it sucked, but it wasn't the greatest. It wasn't the best. So here is my interpretation of the 2 and 15-minute hour episode last night. Because not only was it 2 hours, it was longer than 2 hours last night.
Why? This is not necessary.
The cat just jumped on the counter and is going through food, and I'm letting it happen because I'm on camera. Okay, so it starts with Zach. So the ending last week, Zach was like, Gabby, nope, Rachel. Okay, here's my first admission. I thought that Zach was Erich and Erich was Zach until about halfway through last night. I don't know the difference between them. We'll talk about it a little later. But now, so Zach pulls Rachel out of the rose ceremony, and he is like, you know, when we were in the fantasy suites, I felt like I was with Bachelorette Rachel and not the real Rachel. And I'm saying, has she been real Rachel ever? Hasn't she always been Bachelorette Rachel? I'm not really sure. But my real thinking is he knew he was gonna not get a rose and he wanted to be in control of the situation. So he pulled her aside to break up with her so that he didn't get broken up with. That's my theory. I could be wrong, but I doubt it. So he leaves, and then they do this stupid intercut of live like Jesse and studio audience live in a studio, and then they bring Zach out and they rehash their entire conversation they just had again in front of all of us, and we're all just like, oh my God, make it stop. And then these postpartums are painful, and boring Jesse is awful. Please, please bring Caitlin back next season. Okay, then then Rachel gives her roses to Tino and Aven, and it's time to go see families, which means we're gonna see Big Tony again, but also we're gonna see Grandpa John.
Yes.
Whoop, whoop. Okay, so Rachel's family is first. And Aven meets her family first. So Rachel, okay, first of all, I just want to say, I hope I'm not covering the microphone with my sheet. I really think that the costume designers can't stand Rachel because she's in another questionable ensemble in which from the waist up, she looks like she's in a prison jumpsuit. So I don't know what she did to the costume designers, but they are unhappy with her, I think. Or her stylist, probably not the costume designer.
It was a really peculiar outfit because it really did look like a prison jumpsuit.
It did
from the waist up, and then when they pan out, you're like,
it was cute.
It was kind of cute.
Yeah, but if it was orange, it would have obviously looked like exactly like a prison jumpsuit. But the red with the lighting, I was like, wait, is this a metaphor? Does she feel like she's in prison on The Bachelorette? Rachel, blink twice. Are you in danger? Okay, so Aven comes in and he meets Rachel's parents. He gives her dad a cigar, which is not helping the stereotypes that we are all thinking about Big Tony maybe being a garbage man, a la The Sopranos. But Big Tony talks to Aven. We will talk about this a little more, but Aven tells her friends that, he really likes her, but he's not sure he's ready for the engagement. He just wants to be with her. And then they tell Rachel that, and Rachel loses her ever-loving mind. And Aven is trying to have like an adult conversation and explain what he's talking about, and she just keeps like,
stop yelling at me.
She's like, you're yelling at me. He's like, I'm having a conversation with you. I'm not yelling at you. And it's wild. So we'll talk about this more, but I think Rachel is absolutely in the wrong here. This just solidified how much I really just don't like Rachel on this season, I think. And my other query is she even really that upset? Because she's been obsessed with Tino all along. Is she just acting like this, but she really doesn't care because she's going to go with Tino anyways?
I think that she's acting, but I will say I get the feeling that she, though, really wants to be wanted. And
yes.
So even when she's rejected, but she doesn't really want that person, she still wants that person to want her.
Right.
Which is like a very like human.
That's a human thing. You don't want to be rejected.
But I don't think it's not cool.
Right. So then we go to Gabby's family. Yay, everyone's so happy. So Gabby's family is awesome. Honestly, I would have just preferred 2 hours and 15 minutes of Grandpa John. He said at one point, you want to make sure that you're both 90-90, not 50-50. And I loved that. I also want to point out that at one point in our group watch last night, our good friend Jorge This is a side note because we've already talked about Zach and said goodbye to Zach. But Zach, like at one point, Zach throws Mexico under the bus, and I can't remember exactly what the situation was, but Jorge was very offended and was like, "Hey, don't throw Mexico under the bus." Jorge is from Mexico, everybody, and he was very upset with Zach, as we all are, because Zach sucks. Back to Gabby. So Gabby's dad is super nice, and he has a really nice visit with Erich. Erich is really nice. Patrick, Gabby's dad, is really nice. Gabby's stepmom is really nice. Her aunt is really nice. They're just like a nice, genuine family. You can see why Gabby is the way that she is because of her family. And she has a really great conversation with her aunt, and she's just like, I just don't trust myself because I've been like hurt before, and there's a lot of stuff going on in the background. And I wrote in my notes, girl, I relate, girl.
Yeah.
Like, I think we all don't trust ourselves when we're going into relationships because you don't want to get hurt. So that's a really nice date. They have a really nice time. I just want to meet Grandpa John. I want to hug Grandpa John. I want him to tell me life advice. Grandpa John,
And to be the Bachelor.
They were joking about that in the live section where they were like Gabby's grandpa for the next Bachelor, and Jesse asked if he was getting any DMs, and Gabby's like, he has a flip phone, and that made me love him even more. He has a flip phone. Bless him.
Wonderful.
I know. Okay, so then we get to Tino's date. Full disclosure, I find Tino boring. I don't care about Tino, except I am curious about his crazy hobbies. He mentioned that he only talks to his dad about sports, which means he probably needs to be in therapy. And then Rachel's family seems to like Tino. They seem to get along. I still think Tino is just Big Tony. I think they're very similar. So I think that's one of the reasons Rachel really likes Tino, is that he probably reminds her of her dad.
They do give off some sort of like similar, like also like protective vibes. I hadn't thought about that.
Mm-hmm.
Good insight, Ken.
I think that Tino would be really jealous of Rachel's. I think that Tino could be very jealous of Rachel's relationship with her friend Nate, even though clearly they are not going to be a romantic couple. I feel like Tino would feel threatened that she has a close relationship to another guy.
Yeah.
I'm just putting that out in the universe also. And then we get more Aven. More Aven. All this conversation did was further prove to me that Aven is way more mature and that Rachel just wants a ring and not a relationship. Rachel ends it with Aven. And then does Tino feel special watching this back, knowing that he's just like the last one standing? So he's in the final because he's the only one left.
Well, it's
that would make me feel unspecial.
It's like been so clear from like the beginning that like it really felt like it was Tino for her.
Mm-hmm.
And then like I was sort of confused when she's like, oh, but I'm going to go back and I'm going to talk to Aven. And I was like, is it because I wondered if she was worried that Tino wouldn't propose either because of his family. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe
next week will be the most dramatic ever, but this week was not.
No.
Then they did more back to the live in front of the studio audience, and Jesse got real creepy when he was talking with Rachel afterward. I think he thought he sounded sensitive, but he didn't. He sounded weird, and I didn't like it. And then they bring Aven out, and then they rehash the same conversation they just had, and it's super awkward. And it's just like, please stop doing this.
I think that was the problem with this episode. It wasn't that the stuff with Aven or the stuff with Tino, like, or even the stuff with Erich and Gabby wasn't interesting or even dramatic. It's that they made us watch everything that happened twice.
Yep.
Bad editing, bad pacing. I mean, like, That's a producing problem.
That is a production problem. And also the production problem is that during the rewatch 20 minutes ago, I got real bored. So I started doing my daily Duolingo practice. I just hit my 178-day streak. Thank you very much.
Way to go.
Gracias, if you will. And I'm just going to throw out a little, Pedro siempre necesita pantalones grandes. If you speak Spanish, let us know what I just said. No hints. And then we get back to Gabby and Erich, and there's drama now. And then Erich wants to date instead of get engaged, which sounds very familiar because we just had this same conversation earlier. The madness. And then Gabby goes, I don't want to do this anymore. We're just in a big fat dumpster fire. And then they go to the scenes from next week, which is very clearly, cleverly edited scenes. So it doesn't really, it makes us think one thing, but I don't think it's really what we're going to see. Hi, baby. There's a cat next to me. And then I will be, this episode. So let's get this one done. Let's power through this one. We'll power through next week. And then, of course, I will be cheering on Gabby and watching her on Dancing with the Stars starting next week. So that is the episode.
Woohoo! Some wild stuff.
Blah, 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 blah.
Not really, actually.
Oofta. Okay. So my first concept is not really one we have to talk very long about, and I already alluded to it, but I legit, we're in the second to last episode, and I still don't know everybody's names. And I'm on a podcast for the show.
I think that is, okay, here's the thing that's interesting to me. The concept of having two bachelorettes in and of itself wasn't a bad one. And there's actually some really interesting things that emerged because of that decision.
Yeah.
That being said, I don't think that we really know, people come and they watch it either because they like the drama, but whether you're here for the drama, you're here for love, either way, you are here because it's interesting to watch the relationships develop and evolve, even if it's a shit show. Right. And
we didn't have that.
And we didn't have that because, like you said, we're at the end and you don't know their name. I've called Rachel Nicole the entire season. And I think that some of it is that we really never got to know people, and I don't think that they got to know each other, which is why nobody's ready for an engagement at the end.
Which is why they're mature in saying, I want to date you outside of the cameras, because the other thing we've been talking about this entire time is how this seems to be the most mature group of men that have ever been on this show. And they're doing the mature thing of saying, I really like you. I want to get to know you without the 35 people behind us at all times. Let's leave the show once it's over and date and get to know each other in real life instead of getting engaged and then breaking up in 3 months.
Yes. And I wonder if so I wonder if some of it's maturity. I wonder if some of it is that the way, the show's already quick, but given how this kind of played out, did it make everything even more rushed? And then my third thing is also with the guys kind of being the last one standing at the end for both of them, which is really kind of unique. I'm wondering if that also made them feel like, oh, there isn't someone else. We don't have to rush. I don't have to be the one to make that leap to ensure that I can stay in a relationship with this person. And so I do kind of wonder if all of that in and of itself kind of played into this.
Yep.
So yes, it is interesting.
So anyway, I thought Zach was Erich for the first half hour, last night, and felt kind of dumb. And then I was like, no, that's their fault. That's their fault, not my fault. So
it's also a problem that they keep casting these guys that look exactly the same.
they all look alike. Ugh.
So like even when they get the racial diversity like a little bit better, like there's still an aesthetic.
You know what though? I don't think Aven listens to our podcast, although he should. But Aven, I'm obsessed with your mom. She looks super fun. Your dad seems really cool too. Give me a call. I've been to Salem. I know Massachusetts well. Let's chat.
Even
okay.
Beautiful.
The next concept I want to talk about is the difference of the dads. Now, I believe I was the one on the episode during Clayton's season when he met Gabby's dad and Rachel's dad. See? La, la, la. Rachel's dad. And I was so off put by how, like, I'm a big, strong man. You're my princess. I'm going to beat you up if you don't take good care of my princess personality. No, thank you. This is 2022. Stop. I feel like he's the same guy that would take pictures. Like there would be pictures of her at like in her prom dress posing with her boyfriend, and he'd be behind them holding like a rifle, like a shotgun. Like I just feel like that's the kind of dad he is. And maybe I'm totally wrong, but that's how he's been edited.
Yeah.
But then there's Gabby's dad, who's just like, we love Gabby. We just want her to be happy. You seem like you really care for her. You're super chill. And so it's like they have to have, like, why are there dads like Tony still in the year of our Lord 2022? And why is Gabby's family just so cool? I just want to be in Gabby's family, first of all. But like, just the difference between the dads was so glaring this episode because of how, like, I mean, we were joking when we were watching about like Big Tone. Like, I remember the last season, we're like, he's in witness protection and he's just blown his cover and he knows where people are buried. And like, you know, Tino's an architect, so they could work well together because he could, you know, oh, you're about to lay the foundation of the new building you designed. Let me know. And then go like turn all the security cameras off for the night and we'll take care of it. Like, that's stereotyping. It's not cool, but also that's the vibe he gives off. So why? But then I would also say that Rachel seems a lot less mature in how to handle relationships than Gabby does.
Yeah.
Is there a correlation?
I think that
how the dads are.
Well, and if you think about it too, Tino's dad juxtaposed with Aven's dad, for example.
Yes.
Was like such a stark difference too, because I thought that Aven's dad did such a great job of sort of like asking challenging questions while still being like affirming and supportive.
Yep.
And I did think that Tony did a little bit better this season than last. Like, I think that, I don't know if they edited him more gently, if he
might have watched himself and went, oh, I came off bad.
Well, he tweeted something, or I don't know, whatever social media he uses, he did post something to the extent of like, oh, you know, get off my case, like you all will be off my case soon, you know, kind of a thing. I did think that he came across a little more gentle this time.
Yep.
But like in some ways, like it is interesting that, you know, Tino has this kind of like toxic family and father, and I'm not sure that that's all that different than Rachel's. And, you know, like maybe that's what's familiar to her. That's what a good partner or spouse is like. And then I think Rachel's family is so interesting because you know that she has some traumatic family experiences too, right? With her mom.
You mean Gabby?
Gabby, sorry. Gabby. So Gabby, her family's kind of interesting in that, you know, you see her grandpa, who's awesome, you know, asking these really great questions and offering just wonderful advice. And then her aunt, was it her aunt?
Yep.
Too. And
her stepmom. Like she clearly has some strong female support in her life since it's not her mom.
Absolutely. And so like it is like this interesting thing where they're like super supportive, but you also get the feeling that like they've been through some stuff together as a family. And so they're this like loving, supportive family, but they're not like wholesome, like in the sense that like they also have been through some things.
Yep.
So
yep.
Interesting.
Okay, final concept for tonight. So Rachel and Gabby ended up having conversations with gentlemen who wanted to date, but not necessarily get engaged after 10 weeks. Seems like a reasonable thing. And I've seen some things about like, do they need to just change the concept of the Bachelorette and the Bachelor to be like, at the end of this, we hope they'd lose their Neil Lane sponsorship clearly, but maybe they, because, you know, audiences are dropping, the show has been not great for a while. Like maybe the concept is they get to the end and they're like, I want to go and have a real relationship with you and let's date. And there's engagements are off the table, because what you're seeing is two very mature guys saying, I really like you. I really think there's something here, but I want to spend time with you, like more time with you before we decide to make this momentous decision. And Rachel like loses her ever loving mind about it. And so I kind of want to talk about the concept of, do you want to be engaged and have a wedding, or do you want to be married and have a relationship? Because I'm guessing you also have experienced this where you had friends or you had acquaintances who all they talked about was getting married, getting that ring, everything. Like the wedding had to be spectacular, and their families paid a lot of money, and then they were married maybe 5 years because they only were focused on the wedding and not the marriage.
Right.
And I'm getting that vibe from Rachel.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely get that vibe. And that's kind of disappointing too, right? I will say I get the feeling that for the leads, they really kind of go into this with an expectation. And I bet that it is kind of hard if you're just on the show like they were with Clayton, and like in your head you're thinking, oh, I could be married by the end of this, what's next? And you start imagining your life. Like, I mean, I do this, you know, even when like I was on the job market applying for jobs, you know, you get like an interview and I would like start spinning out of control. I'd be thinking about where I would live. I want to search for houses. I would start imagining my life in this like new place. And then if I wouldn't get the job, I would feel just devastated. Yep. Even if I like kind of had an interview and I was like, ooh, I just don't know if this is the best place for us. But like I'd start like imagining sort of an ideal future there. And I wonder if they just kind of have these expectations and start like imagining things.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they feel like that maybe won't happen, or maybe too, you feel like, oh, I went through all of this to just date, which I could have dated anyway, like, you know.
Yeah.
That being said, like I do think, I wonder how it would change things if the expectation was just like a committed relationship. I wonder, because I do think that people get sent home because they're not ready for an engagement. Would you choose different people?
Mm-hmm. And I feel like I think they have to do something to change it up. They tried with this clearly, and I don't think it was successful. And I think that like just try a season or two of let's just see if we can get a solid foundation of a relationship out of this.
I think they just need to do Bachelor in Paradise only.
I also agree to that, and I'm super excited that that's starting very soon. And my whole goal of the month of October, while I'm still living with my aunt, is to get my aunt all in on Bachelor in Paradise, because
that's how you hook people. You get them stuck.
She absolutely was watching but not watching. Last week when I was watching the episode on Tuesday night up at home at her house, she was absolutely not watching it but watching it with me.
That's
and it was awesome.
We'll get her. So
we'll get her hooked. Maybe we can get her on the podcast.
So here is my wild card topic for the day.
Yes.
Let's talk about apologies, because there's been a lot. So we've had Jason issued the most beautiful apology ever to Gabby. It was either he is more awesome than I realized, or he has a great publicist, or because it was a beautiful apology. Like, Google it if you're interested. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was two other people that have apologized. So Erich, turns out he did some blackface, and
guys, stop doing blackface.
Stop doing blackface. So I think it was like part of his high school yearbook, which to me begs the question. You have the issue of him in blackface, but also you have this issue of like, really, who were the adults that let this go to print?
Yep. You can like Jimi Hendrix and like wear clothes like Jimi Hendrix without painting your face.
Amen. So if you want to hear a really great take on it, the podcast Two Black Girls in a Rose do a wonderful riff on it, where they're like, look, it's 2011. White people weren't even thinking about racism. And they're like, white people this is just white people doing white people shit.
Just like Jimmy Kimmel on Monday night, lying on the ground. Wow, an amazing, geez. Yep, go ahead. Sorry, I interrupted.
Yep. So you should check it out. Erich did issue a really, I think, as good of apology as someone can make for having done blackface 10-11 years ago. And yes, so check out Erich's apology. But then on the show, we had Aven apologizing, and a lot. Yeah. And I wanted to be like, girl, stop apologizing.
No reference to that woman either. She's the worst.
She is kind of the worst. But Aven, okay, so recently I heard like a speaker who kind of said that when women apologize, they say they mean I feel bad, and when guys apologize, they mean I take blame. I will say I feel like the dynamics of this show kind of switch some of that up, right? Like, I think that there's a lot of pressure if you're worried that you might get bad press, or that you might be portrayed in a bad light in the show, that I think sometimes you see this on like the Men Tell All and like things like that, where they're like, they're just so generous to the leads. But I wanted to just be like, no, dude, you didn't do anything wrong. And I sometimes do find it weirdly problematic when, like, if you want to talk about power relationships and apologizing, how often leads, regardless of sex or gender, are not the ones to do any apologizing?
Right. Never. I don't think I've seen a single one.
And so I thought that was like, even in watching it back, Rachel just has this like stone face. And there was like no sense that she did anything wrong.
Yeah. Because I don't think she thinks she's wrong in this situation.
I wonder how she feels after everybody on the internet has an opinion about that differs than her own.
Yeah. Maybe not. I don't know. Some people are just like, no, I'm right and you're wrong and I don't care what you tell me. So
yeah, I don't
spend
time with those people. But yeah, so I thought the apologizing was interesting.
Yes. So we're almost done, folks. We almost made it through the most boring first episode of the finale ever. I think we made it more entertaining just talking about it. Did you learn anything this episode? Did this episode impart wisdom on you that you will carry with you every day for the rest of your life?
Well, I learned that Kim knits. And I also learned I liked the 90-90 advice.
Yep. That was mine too. I learned that Jorge is very defensive of blaming Mexico for things Mexico has no control over. And then I also appreciated the 90-90 over 50-50. And I've seen it like it's not 50-50. It's like 30-70. Sometimes you're the 70, sometimes you're the 30. But I like the 90-90 even better. Like, you got to put in the work to make it work, guys.
Yeah.
And I added a town shout out. This is Bill's baby, and we always forget to do it when Bill is not on the podcast. But I'm going to throw out a town shout out, but not read off the Wikipedia page. I'm going to throw out Ames, Iowa as our town shout out because my sister has started listening to the podcast when she's on the treadmill because I said, hey, I'm on a podcast. You should listen to it. And I will know when she finally gets to this episode because she'll be like, really, Kim? You mentioned that I listened to the podcast. But so I don't know any facts about Ames other than it is the home of Iowa State University. It is like, I want to say 70,000 people, maybe more, maybe less. Half the population is as our students. There's a really good sports bar called Wallabies up in Somerset that you should check out if you're ever in Ames. They built the greatest bridge ever on the history of the planet over University Avenue this summer, so you can walk from the RV lots into Jack Trice Stadium. We beat Iowa last weekend. That's a big deal. So shout out Ames, Iowa. Shout out my sister who's listening to the podcast, even though she has not watched a single episode of The Bachelor or The Bachelorette. So thank you for that support. She's like, I don't understand anything, but I enjoy listening to it. So,
oh, that's awesome.
Kudos to my sister. Thank you for listening. And I think we have come to the end. We are so close, everybody. We're so close to the end of the season. We're going to be able to bid adieu to Rachel Nicole, and we'll be able to bid adieu to Gabby, except cheer for her on Dancing with the Stars as long as she dances. I think she looked amazing last night. She was clearly blinged out for Dancing with the Stars with her big extensions and her kicky little silver sparkle dress. She looked great last night. So go, Gabby. Dance well. We're rooting for you. And we are so close to the end of the season, you guys.
We'll do it one more week. We got this.
Whew. You have been listening to Batchademia
with your hosts, Danielle Dick McGee,
Kim Hanna,
and Bill Hennig.
All thoughts and opinions expressed on the show are solely those of the person who spoke them.
If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe to the show, leaving a 5-star rating and review wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Also, please share with your family, friends, colleagues, and other ardent Bachelor fans.
If you have comments or questions you would like us to address on the show, you can email us at batchademia@gmail.com.
Or on the Twitter with the handle @batchademia.
Thanks for listening.